You're listening to continuing coverage in the Las Vegas reporter murder trial of Robert Tellez from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. Now, back to the courtroom.
Yes, I recognize these.
Are they a fair and accurate depiction, with the exception of one, state's proposed one, of how the scene appeared on September the 3rd?
Yes, they are.
State moves to admit, I think two is already admitted, which is, so 2, or I guess 3 through 51.
No objection.
And with respect to state's proposed one, does that appear to be like a Google image of the house?
Yes.
State moves to admit one.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Thank you. The next series I'd like you to look at are state's proposed 52 to 105. If you could have a look at those.
I recognize these as well.
And are they a fair and accurate depiction of sort of the inside of Mr. Gehrman's house?
Yes.
State moves to admit 52 to 105.
No objection.
They're admitted.
Next group is 53 to 134.
And this actually goes with this one. Thank you.
Recognize these.
And are they a fair and accurate depiction of the outside and backyard area of Mr. Gehrman's house?
Yes.
State moves to admit 106 through 134.
No objection.
They're admitted.
Next group is 135 through 148. There's just one more after that.
Okay. Recognize those?
Those appear to be the garage area and Mr. Gehrman's vehicle.
Yes.
State moves to admit 135 through 148.
We have no objection.
They're admitted.
And the last group is state's proposed 149 through 161. If you could go through those.
Recognize those as well.
Okay. And for the record, state's proposed 149 is a diagram of the crime scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the remaining up to 161 are photographs that were taken on the 3rd?
Yes.
Fair and accurate representation of how they appeared with some of the crime scene analyst markers on them?
Yes.
State moves to admit 149 to 161.
We have no objection.
May I publish these, Your Honor?
Mhm.
Thank you. So we're going to start with what's been admitted as States 1. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the front of the residence with a Google Street View.
Okay. And this is what's been admitted as States 2. And what are we looking at in that one?
This is the front of the residence on September 3rd.
Okay. Now, as we see it here, it looks like there's some crime scene tape on there. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Who puts the crime scene tape up?
It's usually going to be the first responding officers.
Okay. And that was in place by the time you got there?
That's correct.
I'm going to put on the overhead States 5. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the west side yard of that same residence.
Okay. And this is State 7. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is, again, the west side yard of that same residence. The gate in the back leads to the backyard, and in front of that gate, you can see the decedent.
Okay. That gate that we see in the backyard, did that have locks on it, or was it closed or anything?
No, there were gates on both the east and west sides of the house, and neither of them had a lock.
Okay. I'm now putting on the overhead, what's been admitted as States 10. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is a photograph of the decedent.
And when you and other crime scene analysts are noting, or I guess documenting the crime scene, is there any movement of the decedent before you take the photographs, or do you want to keep the scene as it was, and in your photography, I guess I should say?
Ideally, we keep the scene as pristine as we can. My photographs were actually taken after initial photographs of another CSA. They had already done an initial cursory body examination, and during that time, they discovered that the circumstances of his death were suspicious, so a homicide was called out.
Was there thinking at one point that it might have been a medical incident?
There was.
Okay. And then after that kind of was dispelled, then homicide and yourself respond?
That's correct.
Now, in terms of the decedent, was there an attempt to document any personal property that he had on his person?
Yes, there was.
And what did he have with him?
Inside the left front pocket of the shorts that he was wearing, he had a cell phone. Protruding from the left rear pocket of those same shorts was a wallet with cards and identification in the name Jeffrey Gehrman, as well as several US dollar bills in cash. And then in his right front pocket, there was a car key.
So I'm putting on the overhead States 40. Is that the cell phone that you just spoke of?
Yes, it is.
And this is States 41. What is that?
This is the car key.
And I think you mentioned a wallet as well?
That's correct.
Okay. This is States 43. That's his wallet?
That's correct.
Was there photography done on the inside of his wallet to see if there was any cash present?
Yes, there was.
This is States 46. And that was documented as well?
Yes.
Probably, do you know how much money he had on him, or?
I can't recall.
Okay.
The evidence was booked by crime scene analyst Christy Thomas.
Okay, but it didn't appear like there was money taken from his wallet because it's present.
It did not appear so.
And this is States 47. That would be his identification?
That's correct.
Now, the area surrounding the body, did yourself and other crime scene analysts take note of the condition of those bushes and kind of shrubs?
Yes.
And what were your observations about them?
The bushes that were closest to the decedent had several broken branches. There was also apparent blood on those branches, and the rocks appeared to be disturbed around those bushes.
And putting on the overhead states 51. Is that an example of that?
Yes, it is.
And this is states 50. Sort of another view of the bushes with blood.
Yes.
You said the rocks around him were disturbed as well?
Yes.
Now, when you're dealing with the decedent's body, are there attempts made to preserve evidence in the form of DNA that might be on his person?
Yes.
And what is that?
We typically, whenever we are recovering a body from a scene, we're going to place hand bags over their hands so we can preserve any kind of DNA evidence that might be on their hands or under the nails, whatever the case may be. We also wrap them in a clean sheet to preserve any trace evidence that might be on them.
I'm putting on the overhead states 37. What is that?
This is a representation of one of the bags that we put on his hand.
Okay. And this is states 36. That would be the other one, I think.
Yes,
And again, you said that's to preserve like DNA evidence?
that's correct.
Did yourself, detectives and crime scene analysts go into Mr. Garriman's residence as well?
Yes, we did.
When you went into the residence, I guess I should say, what way did you make entry? Through the sort of the garage door that leads into the house or the front door?
I
or-
believe we made entry through the interior garage door.
Okay. Did you do any documentation of the front door to note its condition?
Yes,
Was there any damage to the front door?
there was no damage to the front door.
Okay, I'm putting on the overhead states 52. Is that the front door?
Yes, it is.
And the photograph is to document that it hasn't been kicked in or there's no damage to the frame?
That's correct.
How about the interior of the residence? How would you describe it?
The interior of the residence was actually very clean, very orderly. Everything was essentially in its place.
Have you been to residences where places have been ransacked or items have been taken?
Yes, I have.
Did this residence look like that at all?
No, it did not.
Did it look like there was any area of disturbance inside the residence?
No.
This is states 53. What part of the house is that?
This is the living room.
And again, no disturbance and his TV's present, everything looks pretty much in order?
Yes.
This is states 54. Is that just another view of the living room?
Yes, it is.
This is states 59. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the bedroom inside the residence.
And again, no sign of disturbance.
That's correct.
This is state 60. And we're looking at,
This is another view of the bedroom.
okay. I'm putting on the overhead now, state 64. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is like a sitting room that was just off of the living room.
No sign of disturbance in that room.
No.
This is state 66. And what room is that?
This is the office.
This is state 68. Appears to be sort of a closer view of his computer.
Yes.
Any sign of disturbance that you saw in that office area?
No.
Did you note the condition of like closets and cupboards to document whether or not there was any disturbance in those areas as well?
Yes, I did.
This is state 71. No disturbance in that closet, it appears.
That's correct.
And this is state 74. sort of a covered, no disturbance?
That's correct.
And was it like that throughout the house? There was no sign of disturbance anywhere on the inside?
Correct.
Did Mr. Gehrman have medication that appeared undisturbed as well?
Yes, he did.
I want to move to, this is States 81, you can tell me. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the dining room area inside the residence.
Okay, and this is States 83. That dining room area to the right of it is a kitchen?
Yes.
And I see like a butcher block on the counter there. Did you document whether any knives were missing or anything like that?
There were no knives missing from the block.
Okay. This is States 89. What are we looking at there?
This is another view of the other side of the kitchen.
Okay, no sign of disturbance.
No sign of disturbance.
And this is States 91.
This is again another view of the kitchen.
And again, no indication of disturbance.
No disturbance.
I'm showing you now States 100. And it appears to be a trash bag. What was done with that?
This trash bag was located on the floor in between that dining room area and the kitchen. It was just open on the floor like that. We went through it and looked for any kind of receipts to kind of determine a timeline.
And I'm putting on the overhead now States 103. What is that?
This is a receipt from Roberto's,
Okay.
dated 9/2, I believe at 9:03 a.m.
Okay. And the date would be on the receipt here. Let me see. Can you see it? Oh, I know. So we see the receipt from 9/2?
That's correct.
Okay. And the other part of the receipt has the time at 9:03 a.m.?
Yes.
How about the sort of the exterior of all of Mr. Gehrman's house? Was that documented by crime scene analysts as well?
Yes, it was.
And what was the purpose of that?
Just to document to see if there were any kind of disturbances or any way that somebody might have made entry into the residence.
This is States 106. Let me back up. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the west side gate that is just behind the decedent.
Okay, and that gate is closed, but there's not locks on it?
That's correct.
Was there any sign of disturbance around sort of the perimeter of the house?
There wasn't much of a disturbance. As you can see in that last photo, the gate is not latched all the way. So the door is closed, but it's not latched. Also, there's a window just north of that gate, so on the other side of the gate in the backyard. That window had a slash through the screen.
Okay, I'm putting on the overhead States 111. Can we see the window that you're talking about in that photograph? It's probably, can you see it or no?
I don't believe so. It's actually just beyond that bush on the left.
Okay, I'll try this one. This is States 113. Can you see looking at 113, can you see the slash mark on the window?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's the linear line.
Can you, there's a mouse up there? Yeah.
I believe that this is the slash.
Okay, I'm gonna approach just so you're sure.
Yes, that appears to be so.
Okay. Did you take a closer look at that slash, or is there any further description you can give of it
There's just a tear in the
in the screen?
in the screen.
Okay. This is States 114. It might be a better picture of it. Is that the slash that you were talking about?
That's correct.
Any other disturbance though on the window, like on the inside of that corresponding room, broken glass, anything pushed out?
No, not that we noticed.
Okay. And as you continue to the back of the residence, any disturbance whatsoever?
Not that I recall.
Okay, this is States 117. That appear to be the back of the residence?
Yes.
And then the back door that leads, I assume, into the kitchen area, no, that wasn't broken or any sign of disturbance to that as well?
No.
Mr. Gehrman's car was present at the scene?
Yes, it was.
This is States 135. And the keys were in his pocket, right?
That's correct. One key was in his pocket and one key was actually in the bedroom closet.
In the bedroom closet. The car itself, was it disturbed? Did you look at it on the inside?
We did open up the car. It was very clean on the inside.
Clean on the inside, nothing appeared out of the ordinary?
That's correct.
So the scene appears to be kind of confined to that side yard area.
Yes.
I'm going to put on the overhead States 149. What are we looking at in this exhibit?
This is a diagram of the crime scene.
Okay. Now on this diagram, I see AB6, AB5, 15, AB4, and AB3, 2, and 1. What are those designations?
The AB 1 through, I believe it's 6, is apparent blood. So apparent blood stain 1 through 6. They're in different locations around the body. Number 15 is actually a broken branch that we located near the body that also had apparent blood on it.
Were swabs taken of these areas?
Yes.
And how do you guys do that at a scene?
Whenever we take swabs of apparent blood, especially in this case, AB1 and AB2 are actually going to just be the physical surface that the blood was on. So it's 2 rocks. 15, like I said, is a branch that had apparent blood on it. So that was booked just as a branch. However, I believe it's AB3 through AB6. We take a cotton swab, so think of it like a Q-tip. You put molecular water on it, which is just essentially clean water. And then we swab the stain and secure it in an envelope and submit it for evidence.
Now, prior to swabbing it, do you mark it on the ground or on wherever it is and photograph it so you know which one is AB1, 2, 3, or 4?
That's correct.
I'm putting on the overhead States 150. And can you see the crime scene analyst markers on there?
Yes, you can.
And where should the jury be looking for those?
If you look here on the rocks, this is AB1 and AB2, I believe. The rocks themselves were collected. And then one of the designators is actually right here in the bush on the branch.
Okay. This is States 151. And are you able to see those markers as AB, well, I can read it with my glasses, AB1 and AB2?
Yes, AB1, AB2 are on the ground, AB3 is on the branch.
Okay, and those correspond to where they were on the diagram?
That's correct.
And so this would be AB3, which is on that branch.
Yes.
Now I'm putting on the overhead States 158. Appears to be like a outside decorative butterfly and a bird bath. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And were swabs taken from those items as well?
Yes.
And those would have been impounded the same way that you previously described?
That's correct.
And then are you, as a crime scene analyst, the person who does DNA testing or forensic testing on the item?
No, I do not.
Okay. I think that's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Browning, you had testified it was yourself and two other crime scene analysts.
That's correct.
The other two analysts were Thomas and King.
That's correct.
Did all three of you arrive at the address at the same time?
Approximately the same time, yes.
Approximately what time did you arrive?
1441.
Did you arrive in the same vehicle with crime scene analyst Thomas?
I don't believe so. I think we took separate vehicles.
Okay, same question for crime scene analyst King.
I think she also took a separate vehicle.
All right. You arrive at the residence. Who's present when you arrive?
When I arrived, crime scene analyst Janelle Bracken was there initially. She did the initial documentation of the decedent. I believe homicide had already arrived, and there were patrol officers as well.
So when you arrive, and you testified that you arrived at presumably the same time that crime scene analyst Thomas and crime scene analyst King arrived, crime scene analyst Bracken was already there.
That's correct.
So now we have 4 crime scene analysts.
Yes, she responded to the scene initially on a dead body call. After they did their coroner examination, they determined that the circumstances of that death were suspicious. So as it was the end of her shift, swing shift, which is a shift that I work, took over, and she left the scene.
Are you aware of what time crime scene analyst Bracken arrived?
I am not sure what time she arrived.
When you arrived, you testified that homicide was there. You're referring to homicide detail?
Homicide detectives, that's correct.
And who was the principal detective, if you knew, of this crime scene investigation based upon your arrival and your understanding?
I believe the detectives that were the lead agents on the case were Detective Gaddis and Hawkins.
Gaddis and Hawkins.
That's correct.
And they belong basically to the homicide group or the homicide detail, fair to say?
That's correct.
How many detectives in total were present when you arrived?
I can't recall.
Fair to say there was a lot of people coming in and out?
There were,
Law enforcement.
yes, there were a lot of law enforcement on scene.
How many patrol officers were on scene, if you're aware?
I can't recall.
Are you aware of any Metro Intelligence officers that were present?
I don't recall that.
Okay. There may have been, you just don't recall.
That's correct.
Now, your responsibilities were primarily that of taking photos and generating a report in reference to those photos, fair to
Correct.
say? As well as the evidence diagram that we've reviewed with you, that's State's Exhibit 149, correct?
CSA Thomas was the one that impounded the evidence and generated the diagram.
Okay. So your primary responsibility was that of photographing.
That's correct.
We were shown photographs, and it was State's Exhibit 36 of the hands. Do you recall those?
That's correct, yeah.
You didn't place basically the covering on the hands, correct?
I can't recall which of us put the handbags over the
Okay.
hand.
So you may have put the handbags on the hands?
Typically, it'll be the crime scene analyst who is doing the evidence recovery will do that, but I can't recall.
Okay, and who would have that person been?
That would have been CSA Thomas.
But you don't know if it was CSA Thomas or yourself, correct, to put those baggies on?
I can't recall.
And fair to say, when you arrived, there were no bags on the hands, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know how long those hands were exposed prior to your arrival?
Correct.
You had given testimony concerning this knife block inside Mr. Gehrman's residence,
Yes.
and you had testified that no knives were missing from that particular block, correct? Did you, and this block was in the kitchen area,
Yes, it was.
did you open and review the drawers contained within, inside the kitchen?
Not that I recall.
Didn't photograph the contents?
No.
Didn't know what was in there before your arrival, a week before, or following your departure, correct?
No.
Did you take any measurements of the distance between the kitchen area to the scene where the photographs were taken of the blood and the other matters?
No, we did not.
You were asked to give testimony concerning the slash. It states Exhibit 113. And you characterize that as a slash, correct?
Yes.
I'm sorry? You probably, I don't want to mess up your stack. I have 113, but actually I have it. Thank you very much. Can you see it? There's a delay. This is the slash that was referred to, correct?
Yes.
Window. And that was on the other side of the gate where Mr. Gehrman was found, correct?
Correct.
And then a close-up of this slash is in Exhibit 115, correct?
Yes.
Now, you use the word slash, but you don't know whether or not that was slashed by a knife or was even cut, correct?
No, it's a defect.
A defect. So, I mean, the idea of slash, that's something that doesn't necessarily fit that photograph, does it?
It could potentially, but it is a defect in the screen.
It could have been a fray.
It could have been.
And are you aware of what level, what height this slash or this fray was from the ground?
I don't recall.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Can you direct?
Ms. Browning, when crime scene analysts are working scenes, it looks like you're on duty now, right? Is that what you would wear?
Yes.
Do you wear gloves?
Yes, we do.
What's the purpose of crime scene analysts wearing gloves?
It's to prevent any contamination or cross-contamination of the scene.
Okay, and do all crime scene analysts at murder scenes wear gloves in order to avoid that contamination?
Yes, we do. We actually double glove anytime that DNA is a concern.
Okay, and so whoever bagged the hands of Mr. Gehrman would have been double gloved?
That's correct.
Okay. When you got to the scene, I think you, we talked about there being crime scene tape up.
That's correct.
Okay. What's the purpose of the tape?
The tape is to keep any non-law enforcement personnel out of the scene.
When you've been at murder scenes in your work at Metro, in a murder scene, if you're law enforcement, is everybody allowed to go in the scene where the decedent is?
No.
What are the rules on that?
Typically, it's going to be people that are actively investigating the scene.
Okay, so anyone who happens to be standing around can't go into the scene?
Correct.
And are there steps taken by patrol officers, analysts, and detectives, everybody, to preserve scenes?
Yes.
And that's in order to preserve any possible evidence that might be present?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any requests?
Yes, and follow up. You were part of a second group that arrived. There was a crime scene analyst, Bracken, who had arrived prior to you, correct?
Correct.
Initially, this wasn't treated as a homicide scene, was it?
Not initially.
So these concerns regarding preserving evidence and contamination obviously would have followed. Fair to say?
Anytime that a decedent is on scene, we do our best to lock down the scene. We have patrol officers on scene. We put tape up. We take all the precautions as necessary.
But you weren't present.
I was not present for that.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
No other questions, Ronnie?
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You are excused from your subpoena. Thank you for being here. And you may call your next witness. Thanks.
The next witness, Your Honor, is Jamie Idols.
Jamie Idols. Please watch your steps and keep shoving up into the witness stand. Remain standing, raise your right hand, face forward, please.
All right.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My name is Jamie Yos, Jamie, Jamie, last name Yos, IOOS as in Sam.
May I proceed, Your Honor? How were you employed?
I am the Director of the Office of Public Information for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
And what does that mean you do?
I supervise a staff of 10. We are a liaison between the public, the media, and the department. We put together press releases, press conferences. We maintain the department's social media sites as well as the website.
When you say press releases, does that sometimes concern crimes that have just occurred?
Yes, it does.
And are some of those seeking the public's assistance to see if they can identify somebody?
Yes, we do ask for the public's assistance.
Were you working in that capacity in September of 2022?
Yes.
And were you involved in the press releases associated with the Jeff Gehrman homicide?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you remember, can you tell the members of the jury just generally what type of information or what was released by Metro related to that investigation?
The Public Information Office is not an investigative unit, but when an investigative unit like homicide wants to put out pictures of a crime scene, of evidence, of video they have of a suspect, they'll coordinate with the Public Information Office and we'll either put together a written press release that we release to the media, or sometimes we do press conferences where we release photos and videos of evidence.
And was video evidence released in this case?
Yes, we had video evidence in this case.
Who compiles that, or who decides what's released?
The homicide section, or whatever the investigative section is, decides what they want released, and then they send it to the Public Information Office, and we kind of compile it for them and put it together in a presentation that then we can give to the public.
Okay. I want to play, I think this will be State's Proposed 338.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just expand the screen. Okay. Whenever you're ready to-
Okay. Does that image look familiar, or the kind of
Yes.
top part of that? It
Yes.
says man found deceased outside home.
Yep.
What are we looking at there?
We're looking at surveillance video from the neighborhood of where the Gehrman murder occurred that homicide gave to the Public Information Office to release for a press conference on September 6th, 2022.
And there was video, this is sort of a still of the video evidence that was released?
Yes.
Okay, can we just play that? So looking at that video, it appears there's like a normal speed of an individual walking, is that correct?
Correct?
And then a slower version?
Yes.
And then a picture of a car?
Yes.
And then a still?
Yes.
sort of? All of those would have been provided to you by homicide detectives?
Yes.
Metro pushes that information out on September 5th or 6th?
September 5th, we released a photo of the suspect in the case. September 6th, we had a press conference where we released the video, the picture of the car, and again, the still photo of the suspect.
Now, once those are put out by Metro, if someone is calling in and says, I have information, does that go to you?
No, that does not go to our office. If we need a 24/7 response, there's a certain phone number that goes to what we call our Fusion Watch, where we put out their phone number that can get answered at any time if people have tips. We also provide the Crime Stoppers phone number, so if people want to call and report tips anonymously, they can do that. We also, for that press conference, provided the email for the homicide section in case anyone wanted to email homicide as well.
Okay. And the tips that come in, those are followed up by homicide at
Yes.
your office?
Right.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I'll pass the witness.
Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. So just so we're clear, you're involved in putting this information, these photographs, these recordings out, but you don't monitor the responses
No.
that are received. Were you involved in the series concerning Bob the Burglar, where there was a similarly dressed individual in this area?
Yes.
And when was this Bob the Burglar series presented?
Approximately 1 to 2 months before the homicide.
Okay, and you reviewed those videos in preparation for your testimony today?
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Nothing else, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. Please step down and you're excused for your subpoena. And the state may call their next witness.
Stephanie Smithson.
I'll take that off. Remain standing, raise your right hand, face the clerk.
Do you solemnly swear in the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
My first name is Stephanie, Stephanie. Last name is Smithson, Smisen.
May I proceed? How are you employed?
I'm employed with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
And what is your job title?
I am a senior crime scene analyst.
We just had a crime scene analyst testify before you. How long have you worked as a crime scene analyst?
Almost 8 years.
And you're a senior crime scene analyst as well?
Yes.
And so that means you're allowed to go to more complicated scenes because of a demonstrated proficiency and experience?
Yes.
When crime scene analysts assist detectives with search warrants, can you describe what your responsibilities are at that type of scene?
Yeah, so generally we'll document the crime scene, and we do that by taking notes, we take photographs, we collect evidence, sometimes we'll process for fingerprints, and then at the end we'll generate a report.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Mr. Duskitchen?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you some photographs. The first one is State's Proposed 217. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
And is that the location where you served a search warrant on September 7th with detectives?
Yes.
And then I'd like you to look through this series of photographs, which is State's Proposed 254 through 310. And tell me when you're done with those, please. With respect to 254 to 310, are those a fair and accurate depiction of the location of the search warrant as well as items recovered from the search warrant?
Yes.
State moves to admit those exhibits or those photographs.
No objection.
They're admitted.
And then with respect to 217, is that an outside view of the location for the search warrant?
Yes.
State moves to admit 217.
No objection.
It's admitted.
Now, as the crime scene analyst on a search warrant, are you searching as well as the detectives?
We generally leave the searching up to the detectives.
Okay, so they search the particular locations, and then where do you guys come in as crime scene analysts?
Once they find an item of interest, they will ask us to go to that location and photograph it, document it, or collect it.
Okay. I'm putting on the overhead what's been admitted as states 217. Do you recognize that location?
Yes.
Is that 9624 Spanish Steps Lane?
Yes.
Did you know whose residence this was?
Yes.
Whose residence is it?
Robert Teller.
Okay, and that's, a search warrant was served there on September the 7th with detectives and yourself?
Yes.
You said the detectives typically are doing the searching and you document where various items are found photographically?
Yes.
And then what happens to those items after you document them photographically?
We can collect it and bring it back to the lab for impound or further processing.
Okay. I'm putting on the overhead what's been admitted as states 254. What area of the residence are we looking at in that photograph?
This is the kitchen.
And there appears to be an open drawer on the right side of the dishwasher?
Yes.
What of interest was in that drawer?
There were several items inside of that drawer.
Such as?
Scissors, I believe a knife was in there as well, or a
Okay.
box cutter.
I'm putting on the overhead states 255, sort of a closer view of that drawer. Is that fair?
Yes.
And there, it looks like there's a pair of black scissors, maybe a box cutter, and then some gray scissors?
Yes.
This is states 256. Is that a closer up view of those items?
Yes.
Were those items collected and impounded by you?
Yes.
With respect to those items, did you do anything in terms of further processing them for the presence of blood or DNA type evidence?
Yes, they were all swabbed for possible DNA. The scissors, the gray ones, were swabbed for apparent blood.
For apparent blood. I'm putting on the overhead states 259. Those are the gray scissors.
Yes.
And what is the notation that we see with the AB5, the bright pink?
The pink sticker is just a scaled sticker to show an area of interest, the area that I believe to be apparent blood.
Okay, and those are these are things that you processed yourself?
Correct.
You swapped? Do you recall a pair of shoes or like half a shoe and a whole shoe being collected at that scene?
Yes.
I'm putting on the overhead states 263. Do you recognize that shoe?
Yes.
And was that one of the shoes that were collected at that search warrant?
Yes.
And this is states 268. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is a partial shoe that was also located
Okay.
and recovered.
And were you the person that swabbed the shoe and the partial shoe for possible DNA evidence?
Yes.
I'm putting on the overhead states 274. Is that upside down?
Yes.
All right. What are we looking at there?
These are some multiple pieces of like white, gray, rubber pieces.
And did they appear to be like pieces of a shoe?
They appear to be that way, yes.
Okay. Did you swab those items as well?
There was one that I swabbed.
And why did you swab a particular item?
There was a small area of a reddish brown stain on one of the pieces.
Okay. I'm going to put on the overhead states 275. Zoom in. Do you see the area that you swabbed?
Yes.
And usually, I think there's a mouse up in front of you. Are you able to point that out for the jury?
Oh, where'd it go? I don't know where the mouse went.
Okay, well, how about,
Okay.
Is that the area?
Yes.
Okay. I'm now putting on the overhead states 277. Let me back out. What are we looking at in that photograph?
This is a Ziploc bag that had more of those rubber pieces that were gray, black, and white in color.
Okay. And did you make some attempt to put some of them together to document what the cut pieces might have been before they were all cut up tiny?
Yes.
This is states 280. And what are we looking at there?
This appears to be the tongue of the shoe that will depict the brand, the size.
So it's like a Nike shoe.
Yes.
I'm now putting on the overhead states 282. What is that photograph?
This is a picture of a Sprouts grocery bag containing multiple pieces of a cut straw hat.
This is states 284. Is that the hat?
Yes.
And this is states 285. It looks like you laid the pieces of the hat out.
Yes.
Did you do any swabs on that Sprouts bag itself?
The bag, yes.
Okay. And what was the purpose of swabbing it?
For possible DNA.
And how about on the pieces of the hat? Did you swab them?
No.
Let me. Just 1 second. Were all of the different pieces of the hat impounded?
Yes. Thank you.
And lastly, I'm putting on the overhead states 306. What is that item?
This is a duffel bag.
And was that collected in the search warrant as well?
Yes.
And so you would have photographed that and impounded that as well?
Yes.
If I could have the court's indulgence for just 1 second. Okay, thank you. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Smithson, when you arrived at the residence, what time was it?
At the residence was about 9:30 a.m.
Who else was present when you arrived?
There were homicide detectives, patrol officers were there, personnel from the crime scene analyst section as well.
Okay, how many other crime scene analysts were present?
There was a crime scene analyst supervisor that was present, our director was present, and myself.
So 3 crime scene analysts.
Correct, when I arrived.
Did others arrive prior to your getting there?
Crime scene analyst?
Yes.
No,
So you were the first,
correct,
and the others arrived after you did.
correct.
Which detectives? What were the identities of the detectives that were present when you arrived?
There were a handful of detectives that were present. Are you looking for names?
Yes, that's my next.
Okay.
Yes.
There was Cliff Mogg, Justine Gaddis. I'm blanking on some of the names, but I want to say Edgar Nahum was there. Brittany, I'm forgetting her last name, but there were numerous detectives that were there.
Do you recall the number of males, females?
As far as detectives,
Yes.
I do not know exactly the number, no.
Okay. You generated a report in reference to your involvement in this case,
Yes.
and you didn't include the names of the detectives in your report?
I did include, I just don't know off the top of my head how many.
Okay. Was it only homicide that was there?
No.
Okay. You agree with me that Metro's divided into various details, groups that investigate certain types of crimes, fair to say?
Yes.
Generally, there's a principal detective, or basically the one's in charge, and then that person delegates various responsibilities to various people.
Yes.
If you recall, who was the primary detective in this case?
It was Detective Justine Gaddis.
Okay. And what other homicide detectives did you interact with in reference to your investigation and collection of evidence in this case?
Her, Cliff Mogg. Again, I'm blanking on names, but may I refer to my report for
Okay,
names?
please.
I apologize. I did not happen to write their names down in my report.
Correct.
I
So
apologize.
again, we don't know, do we? Because you didn't write it down.
I apologize, yes.
Fair enough. We know homicide was there. There were other detectives from other details, correct?
Yes.
There was Metro Intelligence there, correct?
I'm not completely sure.
You're not sure. So we don't really know who was on this scene where you were collecting evidence and having evidence handed to you, correct?
As far as evidence, only I interacted with homicide that was handling off, so intelligence was not handling off evidence to me.
That you're aware of, but we
That
don't
I-
know for sure, do we? Fair to say?
Yes.
Now, in reference to you reviewing these drawers, was your attention drawn to what to photograph or what to document within the kitchen area of this residence?
Yes.
And who was it that directed your attention to those drawers?
I don't remember specifically which detective, to be honest.
Okay.
They were all searching at the same time throughout the residence and usually were pulled in different directions.
Fair enough. So there's a fair amount of chaos going on, correct?
Yes.
On the pair of scissors, and I believe it states Exhibit 217, there appeared to be what may have been blood on those scissors, correct?
Correct.
And you documented that, you preserved that.
Correct. Yes.
And then that went on to another department to analyze, fair to say?
Yes.
In reference to these shoes, you didn't actually find the shoes, but you were directed by another detective to document or to photograph the pieces of the shoes, correct?
Yes.
You don't know who that was, correct?
I believe that was Detective Nahum that directed me for the shoes.
But you agree with me, you're not sure as you sit here today, are you?
I do remember specifically the shoes, yes.
Okay. But there was more than one, correct? There was bags, I mean, there was multiple particles to these shoes, correct?
Yes.
And they were located where in the residence?
There was a couch in one of the living rooms, the northeast living room, and it was underneath the recliner portion of the couch.
But you were directed once these pieces of these shoes were found to that area, correct? You didn't actually find them, did you?
That is correct.
Where were you at when you were summoned to go and find these pieces of these shoes, or to photograph these pictures of these shoes?
I'm in the side of the residence as well with the detectives, catching up on notes.
What room were you in when you were summoned?
I'm not sure exactly which room I was in.
What time were you summoned?
I'm not sure about that as well.
Same questions concerning this hat that was cut up. You were summoned by a detective to come and photograph the hat, correct?
Yes.
That hat was cut up in pieces, correct?
Yes.
You don't recall where you were at when you were summoned, do you?
I was somewhere within the residence.
Okay, and how large was this residence?
It was a standard 2-story residence.
How many bedrooms?
There's one downstairs. I believe there was the master bedroom upstairs and 2 children bedrooms upstairs as well.
Did you diagram the residence?
I did not diagram the residence, no.
How many square feet was the residence?
I am not sure.
You arrived at the residence a little after 9 o'clock is your testimony?
Yes.
What time did you leave the residence?
May I refer to my report?
Please.
I left at 7 o'clock at night.
Okay. So
Oh,
what
I
time?
apologize. I left at 1:18 in the afternoon.
Okay, so you were there for approximately 4 hours.
Yes.
Fair to say you were in multiple rooms, correct?
Yes.
Did you ever go into the backyard?
Yes.
Side yards?
Yes.
Front yards?
Yes.
There were times while you were at the residence you would have walked out on the street, correct?
Yes.
So you're in and out during this 4-hour period, correct?
Yes.
You're not paying attention to who's there, who's not. Fair to say?
Might not have noticed everybody that walked through. There's just so many people there.
Exactly. There were so many people, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Yes. Do you know what a CAD report is?
Yes.
What is that?
It is the details of an event that is generated once somebody calls into our dispatch. As the dispatcher is receiving the information, they type that into the CAD event, and those are just all the details from that event.
Do you have to tell the dispatcher when you're going to a search warrant?
Like when we get assigned?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So you would have had to radio in or log in and say that you're going to this particular location?
Yes.
And so you would be in a CAD report as someone at that location?
Yes.
You mentioned that, you discussed on cross-examination with Mr. Draskovich that there was no diagram done in this case, at this location. Is that correct? This was a search warrant, right?
Yes.
It's not a crime scene?
Yes.
You're looking for evidence?
Yes.
Or the detectives are. Diagrams are at crime scenes to note where particular items of evidence are. Is that fair?
Yes, they're generally at the original crime scene.
Okay, not at search warrants?
Correct.
Because items could be hidden and obviously placed there by defendants.
Judging meeting.
What's his name?
Items in a house are placed or under the control of whoever's in that house. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So their location may not be accurate.
Sorry, could you?
Their location, I guess that's a bad question. Their location could be manipulated.
Potentially, yes.
Thank you.
Any response?
Yes, in reference to the manipulation of these items, it could be manipulated by who's ever in the residence while you are, correct? Law enforcement.
Generally, once I arrive to the crime scene, I will photograph the scene before anybody moves anything or touches anything, so the photos that I have are in its original state as we arrived.
As you arrived, but then you would testify that you were summoned to come and photograph these various items of interest, correct?
As they're located, yes.
Yes, but you weren't doing the locating, correct?
Correct.
Same question concerning this bag, specifically States Exhibit 306. This bag you did not find, did you?
No.
You were summoned
Yes.
with all the people coming in and out, correct?
With the detectives, the homicide detectives and specifically.
Or other detectives, whoever else was in there with law enforcement, fair to say?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
No. Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You are excused from your subpoena. Thank you very much for being here. This time you may step down. At this time we are going to recess for a break. During this recess, you must not discuss or communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by voice, phone, email, text, internet, or other means of communication or social media. Read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do research, consult dictionaries, the internet, or reference materials. Do any investigation, test a theory, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own or form or express any opinion regarding the case until it's finally submitted to you, and will be in recess till 3:30.
Thank you. All rise for next jury, please. Jurors.
continuing coverage in the Las Vegas Reporter murder trial of Robert Tellez is on the way. From the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today, press subscribe now.